What do you actually do in a 3D print class? Is the question I am asked whenever I share this new venture of mine with people. Previously, I've talked about the financial side of running a 3D print design club for kids. But what I wanted to do here is show you the basics of how I actually run one of these classes. So, first off, you gotta pick a design brief. And I've already got a list of things I've tried and tested. But one of those special projects is to design your own dragon. And luckily, I've already made a template where I designed a headless dragon. And the goal here is to get your class of kids to make their very own dragon head, so that you can stitch it onto the existing model. The next thing you need is clay. But since this is a class aimed for kids and beginners, you'll want to buy these bags of air-dried clay. They're super cheap, and they completely harden a couple hours after you open them. They're also really easy to model with. And with this clay, it cleans up super easily. So with the project and materials in place, we now have to actually run the class, which can sound super stressful, but personally, I think this ends up taking the least amount of effort once you get used to it. So usually I start a class by asking for everyone's full attention. I could just explain the thing I want them to make, but I prefer to make sure that the kids are actually dialed in and listening. So I usually ask what I'm holding, or I'll hand out an example model, and when they tell me what it is, I move forward. Next, I'll tell them that today we're making our own dragon head, which will get attached to this dragon body. Now, if you can show an example to your class of kids of a before and after, they'll easily understand what it is they have to make. I'll then ask if they have any questions, but once that's out of the road, I hand them each a bag of clay, making sure to go around asking each kid what they're making. And I like to make sure that each kid gets at least a moment to explain the thing they're making, because that's part of the fun for them. And if you've got a good group of kids, the hard part is out of the way. I find that the rest of your lesson time is spent answering questions, helping kids out with their modeling, or just listening to them tell you what's going on in their life. Now, throughout the class, it's likely that some kids will finish miles before the others, like in the first 10 minutes. But the issue with that is they tend to start wandering around, or they want to leave the room and go back to their parent. So what I'll do is I'll promise to play a game in the last 5 minutes of the class, which is a total of 45 minutes. This makes sure that the kids stick around for the entire class, and it's also a way to keep the kids' behaviors in check. Otherwise, they don't get to play the game. There's also a prize for whoever wins the game, so there's even more incentive to behave. But I'll go over what that game is in another video, because I don't want to get too sidetracked. Now, once all the kids have made their models and the class is over, you're on to the step of digitizing their designs. Now, to some, this seems like the easy bit, whereas to others, this is the intimidating part. It just depends if you're better with computers or with people. So to get the kids' models into the computer, you first have to scan them in. And luckily, any modern-day cell phone will let you do this. I use the app Polycam, just because it's the most convenient and requires the least amount of technical cleanup. Now, this is a paid subscription, but it will let you do a free trial for the first week. You can try other apps if you insist, but I've done this part already, and honestly, I think it's just easier to bite the bullet on this particular purchase, seeing as it saves you hours of processing and cleanup that other software doesn't. I'm sure more affordable and easy solutions may arise in the future, but given that this class wouldn't exist without them, I'm willing to recommend Polycam on this one. So once you've opened the app and you've pulled out the camera, you'll lay out their model and take upwards of 20 images for a full scan. Some models will need just 30 pictures, some will need upwards of 40, but you'll get a sense depending on how complex their design is. Now, before you hit upload, you'll see some settings like this. I always choose RAW, which gives you the full scan geometry and packs just a single JPEG. And I select object masking so that it removes the surface the model is sitting on, which will help us out later on. And once these have uploaded and are ready to process, I'd recommend taking the kids' clay models with you, just in case one of the scans happens to create a weird result. But you should focus on getting all of the scans done before you leave the venue, say in the last 15 minutes. That way, if your class lasts 45 minutes, you have the next 15 to take scans of the models. We do this because the models are likely to deform when you pack 16 of them in a box and take them home. Now let's say you got back home. That means it's time to prep your models. You've scanned them in, uploaded them, Polycam has processed the results, and now you just gotta download them from the Polycam website. I download each model as an STL file, and once you've got them all in a folder, you can crack open our software of choice, which for us is Blender. And if you don't have Blender installed already, good news, it's free, and you can download and install it on your computer from the blender.org website. Now I'm sitting here with my project file in Blender. This is one I've made before, and I'm planning on making it available if enough people show interest in running a class like this. I'll likely host a school community on school.com. That way I can share files and tutorials, as well as getting feedback and telling me your project requests. But for a demonstration, I'll drop the entire contents of the STLs I downloaded into my template file, and all of the models should be spawned in. Now this is the time to scale them to the size of our project, before spacing them out in a row. Now I want to preface this is not a full tutorial, but instead a rundown of what's involved in the process, and I'm still gauging how much interest this project has. But if enough of you want to try out this 3D Print Design Club thing, just let me know that you're interested in the comments, because that's really the only way I can know if this is worth putting out there. But like I said, this isn't a tutorial, so I'll fast forward through the cleanup process. So basically, once you've fixed any issues with the scan data, you can take the body of the dragon and make a copy for each head. And once they're all aligned, you cut off the bottom surface of the head so that it's flush with the body. And now you can start exporting these in pairs to line up in your slicer, which is the last step before 3D printing these things off. And if all goes well, you should have yourself a class or two worth of these adorable dragons, ready to hand out for the next week. And I always print these in white filament because that way they can always paint or color in the models they get. Now, if that seems like a lot, I promise this gets far simpler after trying it out yourself. And I plan to make a proper guide with a full project file, or at least if enough of you show some interest. But in the meantime, let me show you a simpler project I came up with. And this is perfect for a brand new class of kids, because it's pretty straightforward to understand, and it lets you get to know the kids. And trust me, this one is a much easier process in Blender than the dragons. And that project is creating name tags. So what you're going to need are a bunch of small pieces of paper, and you're going to give 3 to each kid. 2 as a practice, and 1 as their final. Once you've shown them an example of your before and after, you can give them all black Sharpies to draw with. And once you have their final piece, what you're going to do is take a picture of every nameplate you've been given, and in your Photos app, you'll want to crop the image so that it just includes the paper. And once you send these over to the computer through iCloud or Google Drive or Dropbox, you can take each of these images and one by one, start placing them into the template file, specifically by switching out the image in this height displacement modifier, which is what gives this name tag the depth you're looking for. And once you do that, you just export it. Now do that for each name tag, and yes, it is literally that easy. And once you've sent these to your slicer and printed them out, you can pair them up with a keychain so that the kids can clip them to their backpack or something. And I like doing lessons like these, because it's way easier to make than a whole dragon. But also it's cool to see a 2D design become something rigid and real once it's 3D printed. But anyways, how was that? Is there a part I left out? If so, leave a comment or check out one of my other videos.